Released in 1986, Big Trouble in Little China by John Carpenter was once considered a disastrous failure. With a budget of $25 million but earning only $11 million, the film was quickly forgotten by Hollywood, and Carpenter gave up on major projects out of disappointment. However, what no one could have expected was that the film, once deemed a failure, quietly revived itself and became one of the most beloved works of the 1980s. Behind the film's wild action and humour lie behind-the-scenes stories just as extraordinary. James Hong, who played the sorcerer Lo Pan, once thought he might die while standing on a narrow 3-metre-high escalator with no safety harness. Kim Cattrall, the film's leading lady, suffered corneal injuries from wearing stiff, painful green contact lenses solely to achieve the desired visual effect. Even John Carpenter himself was forced by the studio to add an opening scene that glorified the protagonist, Jack Burton, as a hero, something Carpenter vehemently opposed. Let's dive into 20 surprising, bizarre, and sometimes shocking facts about Big Trouble in Little China, a film that seemed destined for failure but ultimately became an immortal classic of cinema and pop culture. 20. Kurt Russell, the hero afraid of failure. In the mid-80s, Kurt Russell was no longer Hollywood's golden boy. The films he starred in, The Thing, Used Cars, and Swing Shift, had all flopped at the box office. Each release was a painful fall, and each failure carved deeper into him a fear that few stars dared to admit, the fear of becoming a burden. When John Carpenter called and said, "I've got a role for you. It's Jack Burton, a loudmouthed, slightly dumb but lovable truck driver," Russell hesitated. He asked, "John, what if it fails again?" A long silence followed. Then Carpenter burst out laughing. "I don't care about the box office, Kurt. I just want to make a movie with you." It wasn't an invitation to a film, it was a salvation. The two friends, who had once created The Thing, a film rejected upon release but later hailed as a classic, were now embarking on a new gamble together. Big Trouble in Little China. Russell later recalled in the DVD commentary, his voice raspy with emotion. "I was scared. I thought I'd drag John down with me, but he just laughed and said, 'Who cares? Let's just have fun.' And so they made the movie. Not for fame, not for money, but simply for the joy of two underdogs dismissed by Hollywood. And that very joy created one of the most beloved films of the 80s. 19. The real hero is not Jack Burton. The world assumed that Jack Burton was the hero. He had the truck, the muscles, the gun, and the swagger of an American saving the world. But John Carpenter, the film's director, had a different intention. A satirical twist aimed squarely at the white hero archetype that had dominated Hollywood for decades. Carpenter said in an interview, "I wanted Jack Burton to think he was the hero, but in reality, he's just the sidekick." In Big Trouble in Little China, Jack constantly screws things up, missing his shots, getting tied up, and even knocking himself unconscious before the final battle. Meanwhile, the one saving the group, battling monsters, and defeating the sorcerer Lo Pan is Wang Chi, his calm and highly skilled Asian friend. This wasn't just a joke, but a clever critique of 80s Hollywood, a time when white characters were always painted as saviors, while people of colour were relegated to the background. Carpenter flipped the script. He let the real hero stay in the background and turned the overconfident white guy into a lovable joke about himself. 30 years later, audiences finally realised Jack Burton wasn't the centre of the story. He was a mirror reflecting an era of cinema where loud, reckless men who thought they were saving the world were really just along for someone else's ride. 18. The Three Storms. The origins of Raiden and Shang Tsung Wind. Fire, thunder. Three warriors clad in robes and wide-brimmed hats descend amidst a storm in Big Trouble in Little China, silent, moving like ancient gods. Few could have guessed that these characters would inspire another pop culture legend, Mortal Kombat. When Mortal Kombat debuted in 1992, its creators admitted they owed John Carpenter an idea. They said, "Raiden, the God of Thunder, is a direct copy of Storm Lightning from Big Trouble in Little China. Even the lightning surrounding his body, his straw hat, and his stoic demeanour all came straight out of Carpenter's Chinatown." And David Lo Pan, his black robe, glowing eyes, flowing hair, and cursed grin became the blueprint for Shang Tsung, the immortal sorcerer who steals souls in the game. But there's a deeper layer of inspiration that few know. Carpenter once shared that the idea for the Three Storms came not just from Chinese legends, but also from a Japanese film called Lone Wolf and Cub. In it, supernatural swordsmen fought with a zen-like, godlike intensity. From Tokyo to San Francisco, and from the silver screen to arcade machines, those bolts of lightning continue to resonate. As proof that Big Trouble in Little China is more than just a movie, it's a cultural DNA flowing through 3 decades. 17. The reverse airport scene, a safety-driven visual trick. Early in the film, there's a scene in which the kidnapper's car speeds out of the airport parking lot while Jack and Wang dodge out of the way. It looks intense, dangerous, and incredibly lifelike. But if you look closely, everything in that scene is running backward. John Carpenter filmed the scene in reverse. The actors ran backward, the car reversed, and then the footage was played back and sped up. The reason wasn't to create a trippy effect, but for safety. The car was too close to the actors and no stunt doubles were used. When played in reverse, the scene became strangely seamless, natural, yet carrying an uncanny energy. It perfectly captured the spirit of the entire film. Familiar, but always just a little off. 16. Kim Cattrall, the unwarned prisoner. In the prison scene, Gracie Law is the only captive tied up and gagged. Audiences thought it was just part of the script, but the truth is, Kim Cattrall wasn't warned beforehand. In the original script, there was a scene where she yelled at the guards, angering them into tying her up, but that scene was cut from the final shoot. When she arrived on set, she was surprised to see real ropes waiting for her. John Carpenter asked, "Are you okay? Is this too uncomfortable?" Kim simply laughed. "I've been in worse situations than this." She endured hours of shooting, only having the gag removed to drink water. Her professionalism earned the crew's respect. And in the scene, Gracie's eyes flash with genuine rage, a spark of emotion that couldn't have been scripted. That's the moment Kim Cattrall turned surprise into cinematic realism. 15. James Hong thought he would die on set. James Hong, a veteran actor with hundreds of roles in a career spanning over half a century, faced a terrifying moment during what should have been a simple scene in Big Trouble in Little China. Playing the villainous Lo Pan, Hong had to stand on a narrow, 3-meter-high escalator while wearing a long, flowing robe that swayed with every step. Below him was an open void that would make anyone's palms sweat. When the escalator started moving, I felt like my heart stopped, Hong recalled. The lights were blinding, smoke was everywhere, and I couldn't see a thing in front of me. My robe kept getting caught on the escalator, and I thought, one misstep and I'm going straight to the ground. Director John Carpenter, known for his perfectionism, refused to use safety harnesses, wanting the scene to look as authentic as possible. He reassured Hong, "Don't worry, we'll frame the shots to make you look regal." But such words weren't very comforting when you're standing on a tall, unsteady escalator, surrounded by fireworks and without any safety precautions. Hong pulled off the scene without a single mistake. When he finally stepped off, the entire crew broke into applause. Years later, Hong humorously reflected, "Lo Pan might look immortal, but in reality, I was just a trembling old man trying not to fall, and I honestly thought I wouldn't survive that day." 14. John Carpenter lost his temper on set. John Carpenter was known for his calm demeanour, a director who always maintained professionalism and control on set. But during one day of shooting Big Trouble in Little China, he completely lost his cool. The reason? A firework exploded before he could call action. Carpenter, usually patient, suddenly shouted, "Who's responsible for this?" His voice echoed across the set. The special effects coordinator hung his head, unable to respond. Kurt Russell, who had worked with Carpenter many times, remarked, "That was one of the rare times I saw John lose it. He's usually so composed, but that firework definitely set him off." However, Carpenter quickly regained his composure. He paused, shooting, inspected the entire pyrotechnic setup, and insisted everything be properly reset. When filming resumed, the scene went off flawlessly. The incident became a memorable behind-the-scenes story that the crew would never forget. 13. The Floating Eye Monster. Cost over $100,000. One of the most iconic images in Big Trouble in Little China is the floating eye monster, a bizarre creature with tentacles and dozens of constantly moving eyes that gave the impression it was watching everything. However, bringing this creature to life came with a hefty price tag, over $100,000, a massive expense for the film's budget at the time. "That thing was a technical nightmare," Carpenter admitted. The monster was created by Boss Films, the same special effects team behind Ghostbusters. But unlike the humorous ghosts in Ghostbusters, the floating eye was an entirely different challenge. Every single eye on the creature was designed to move independently, making it appear alive and sentient. To achieve this, the team had to install dozens of individual controls, all connected to a complicated system of wires and cables running across the set. Just synchronizing the eye's movements took countless sleepless nights, one member of the effects team shared. Carpenter added, "If even one eye malfunctioned, we had to redo the entire scene. At times, I felt like we were pouring money into a creature with too many eyes." Despite the challenges, Carpenter insisted on keeping the monster in the film. To him, the floating eye wasn't just a bizarre addition, it symbolized the eccentric creativity that defined the movie. 12. When John Carpenter didn't like the script. When John Carpenter first read the script for Big Trouble in Little China, he wasn't impressed. The original version was a western where Jack Burton was a gunslinger battling ancient Chinese sorcerers. Carpenter candidly admitted, "I thought it was a mess and nothing special. This wasn't the movie I wanted to make." He decided to overhaul the script, moving the setting from the Wild West to San Francisco's Chinatown and placing the story in the modern day to give it new life. Most importantly, he reimagined Jack Burton's character. Instead of being a typical hero, Carpenter turned Jack into a clueless loudmouth who talked more than he acted and often made things worse. "I wanted Jack to think he was the center of everything, but in reality, he was just along for the ride," Carpenter explained. After making these changes, Carpenter felt much more confident. It wasn't just another weird western anymore. It became something unique that I wanted audiences to step into. And indeed, the film became a one-of-a-kind experience that stood out from anything Hollywood had ever made. 11. The studio forced Carpenter to add the opening scene. When Big Trouble in Little China was completed, John Carpenter was proud of his final cut. The movie originally began with Jack Burton driving his truck, the Pork Chop Express, and diving straight into the story. But 20th Century Fox had other ideas. They demanded an opening scene be added to make it clear that Jack Burton was a heroic figure. Carpenter disagreed. The whole point of the story was that Jack wasn't a real hero, he said. But the studio insisted, and Carpenter reluctantly agreed. The opening scene we see today was a result of that demand. Egg Shen, the Chinese sorcerer, is shown being interrogated, declaring Jack Burton as the hero who saved everyone. To heighten the intrigue, Egg Shen even demonstrates his magical powers by shooting lightning from his hands, immediately pulling viewers into the film's mystical world. Reflecting on the addition, Carpenter later admitted, "I didn't think it was necessary, but if I had to do it, I made sure it was at least entertaining." Ironically, the scene has since become one of the film's most memorable moments, establishing the surreal tone of Big Trouble in Little China right from the beginning. 10. Jackie Chan turned down the role of Wang Chi. Before Dennis Dun was cast as Wang Chi, the loyal friend and true hero of Big Trouble in Little China, John Carpenter had his sights on a major star, Jackie Chan. At the time, Jackie Chan was one of Asia's biggest martial arts icons, and Hollywood was starting to take notice of him through films like Battle Creek Brawl, 1980, and The Protector, 1985. For Carpenter, Chan was the perfect choice for Wang Chi, a calm, skilled fighter with a touch of humour. He wasn't just great at martial arts, his comedic timing was incredible. He would have made Wang Chi unforgettable, Carpenter said. However, things didn't go as planned. The producers were concerned that Chan's English wasn't strong enough to appeal to American audiences. Carpenter pushed back. "I don't care about that. I just want him for the role." But to Carpenter's surprise, Jackie Chan himself ultimately declined the offer. Despite liking the script, Chan decided to focus on his booming career in Hong Kong, where he was at the peak of his stardom. The role eventually went to Dennis Dun, a lesser-known actor at the time. Carpenter had no regrets, saying, "Dennis was incredible. He brought a unique charm to Wang Chi that fit the movie perfectly." 9. When Kurt Russell filmed while suffering a high fever. Kurt Russell was the kind of actor who always gave his all, even when his body wasn't up to it. One of the most memorable scenes in Big Trouble in Little China is when Jack Burton wakes up after the final battle, confused, exhausted, and barely able to stand. What audiences didn't know was that Russell wasn't just acting. He was actually battling a high fever of nearly 39 degrees Celsius during the filming of this scene. "I felt like my entire body was on fire," Russell later recalled in the DVD commentary. "I could barely keep myself upright, but John just kept saying, 'This is perfect. Don't change a thing.'" John Carpenter, unaware of Russell's condition at the time, thought the actor's sluggish movements and dazed expression were a masterful performance. "I thought he was nailing it. I had no idea he was just trying not to collapse," Carpenter later admitted with a guilty chuckle. Despite feeling completely drained, Russell powered through the scene without complaining. His real-life fatigue ended up aligning perfectly with Jack Burton's disoriented state, making the scene authentic and effective. The footage was kept as is, with little editing needed. 8. The box office failure that made John Carpenter quit Hollywood. When Big Trouble in Little China debuted in 1986, John Carpenter believed it would be the biggest hit of his career. It had everything he loved: a unique story, quirky characters, and plenty of surreal, action-packed moments. But reality delivered a harsh blow. The film, with a budget of $19 to $25 million, only managed to gross $11 million at the box office. Carpenter was devastated. "Hollywood killed this movie," he said bluntly. According to him, 20th Century Fox didn't understand the film's bold concept and botched its marketing. Instead of highlighting the movie's creativity, they put out a confusing ad campaign that left audiences unsure of what to expect. Big Trouble in Little China came out during the summer, competing with other big action films. But audiences didn't want a goofy truck driver like Jack Burton. They wanted muscle-bound heroes like Rambo, Carpenter explained with frustration. The film's failure was the breaking point for Carpenter. Fed up with studio interference, he decided to leave Hollywood and focus on smaller, independent projects where he could maintain creative control. 7. Kim Cattrall's corneal injury from contact lenses. Playing Gracie Law wasn't just about delivering witty lines and performing daring stunts for Kim Cattrall. It also required her to wear uncomfortable green contact lenses to fit the film's mystical storyline. It seemed like a minor detail, but in reality, the lenses caused her significant pain. "They were thick, hard, and felt like sandpaper scraping against my eyes," Cattrall recalled. "Every time I took them out, my eyes were bright red, as if someone had punched me." During one particularly long day of shooting, Cattrall had to wear the lenses for hours, resulting in damage to her corneas. She experienced blurry vision and a burning sensation, but pressed on to avoid delaying the shoot. "I'd close my eyes and pretend I didn't feel anything," she joked later. After the scene wrapped, a doctor was called to check on Cattrall's condition. Thankfully, the damage was temporary, but Cattrall described it as one of the most uncomfortable experiences of her career. 6. The special meaning behind the Chinese title. For English-speaking audiences, Big Trouble in Little China is a playful title that hints at a chaotic adventure in Chinatown. But for Asian audiences, the Chinese title carries a deeper, more mythological significance. Translated as "spirits causing chaos in the sacred land," Lingjie Da Maoxian, the title evokes the sense of an ancient epic, pitting humans against supernatural forces. John Carpenter loved the Chinese title. "It sounds like a legendary tale, an ancient battle between mortals and the supernatural. It fits the movie's spirit perfectly," he said. However, he also understood that Western audiences wouldn't respond well to such a long, complex title. Thus, the simpler, punchier Big Trouble in Little China was chosen for the English version. James Hong Lo Pan once joked, "The Chinese title makes me feel like I'm in a grand epic, while the English title makes it seem like a crazy road trip." Despite the differences, both titles encapsulate the film's uniqueness, a blend of mythical Eastern folklore and bold, offbeat Hollywood storytelling. 5. The race against the golden child. When Big Trouble in Little China entered production, John Carpenter had no idea his film would face stiff competition from The Golden Child, another film with a mystical Asian theme. Starring Eddie Murphy, The Golden Child featured a detective reluctantly drawn into a quest to save a magical child with divine powers. Paramount Pictures heavily promoted the film, banking on Murphy's massive star power after the success of Beverly Hills Cop. Meanwhile, 20th Century Fox rushed Big Trouble in Little China into production, hoping to release it before The Golden Child hit theaters. Carpenter and his team were given only 12 weeks to complete the film. "We didn't have time to breathe. Everything had to be done as fast as possible," Carpenter recalled. When both movies were released, The Golden Child dominated the box office, grossing $79 million, while Big Trouble in Little China flopped, earning just $11 million. However, over time, Carpenter's film grew into a cult classic, while The Golden Child faded into relative obscurity. 4. Kurt Russell was convinced it would be a blockbuster. When Kurt Russell signed on to play Jack Burton, he was confident Big Trouble in Little China would be the breakout hit of 1986. With its unique script, talented cast, and John Carpenter at the helm, Russell believed the film had all the ingredients for massive success. In an interview before the premiere, Russell enthusiastically said, "This is unlike anything I've ever seen before. Audiences are going to love it." But when the film flopped, he couldn't hide his disappointment. "I thought this was going to take my career to the next level, but I was wrong," he admitted years later. Despite the failure, Russell remained deeply fond of Jack Burton, calling him one of the most entertaining roles he'd ever played. "Jack's a fool, but he's a lovable fool. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he acts like he's got everything under control. How can you not love a character like that?" Though Big Trouble in Little China didn't achieve the success Russell had hoped for, he took pride in being part of such a creative and unique project. 3. The video game that failed miserably. In 1986, alongside the release of Big Trouble in Little China, a video game based on the film was launched to capitalize on its hype. However, like the movie, the game also flopped spectacularly. The game was released on popular platforms of the time, like the Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. Players controlled Jack Burton as he fought enemies and tried to rescue Gracie Law. Unfortunately, the game was slammed for its poor graphics, repetitive gameplay, and uninspired design. Despite its failure, the game still developed a niche following among die-hard fans of the movie, Today, copies of the game are considered rare collectibles, sought after by nostalgic gamers and collectors. 2. Rain's costume was a work of art. Peter Kwong, who played Rain, one of Lo Pan's 3 elemental warriors, had to spend hours every day preparing for his distinctive look. Rain's spiked, gravity-defying hairstyle was one of the character's most striking features, and it wasn't just a simple prop. The wig was meticulously handcrafted using high-quality synthetic hair, and its value reached an impressive $3,000, a significant amount at the time. Every morning, the makeup team spent nearly 3 hours attaching and styling the wig on Kwong's head. I had to sit completely still while they adjusted every strand, Kwong recalled. Sometimes, I'd fall asleep in the makeup chair, and when I woke up, I'd already transformed into Rain. In addition to the wig, Rain's costume was a masterpiece on its own. The outfit featured intricate, handcrafted details and patterns inspired by traditional Asian art. These elements made Rain stand out as a visually stunning character, even though his screen time was relatively brief. The meticulous effort put into Rain's appearance is a testament to how much care and creativity went into every aspect of Big Trouble in Little China, elevating even minor characters into unforgettable icons. 1. Dwayne Johnson once planned a sequel. In 2015, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson excited fans by announcing his plans to create a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China. A longtime admirer of the film, Johnson clarified that he didn't want to remake it but rather continue the story while honouring the original. Interestingly, Johnson had no intention of replacing Kurt Russell as Jack Burton. Instead, he envisioned Jack returning as a key character, with Russell reprising the role. "You can't replace Jack Burton, he's an icon," Johnson said. While the project received support from some fans, others worried it would lose the unique spirit of the original. Johnson, however, reassured everyone that he was committed to staying true to the film's essence. Although Big Trouble in Little China was considered a flop upon its release, it has since risen to become a cultural phenomenon. The film has inspired movies, video games, and countless fans around the world. If you're a fan of behind-the-scenes stories from classic films, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to uncover more fascinating secrets from the world of cinema.